Hello everyone. Today, this is STEM with Mr. Duda. Today I'm going to be going over the saw-shaped wrench in Tinkercad. So the way to get here, we go to tinkercad.com. You can log in with Google. It will take you to your dashboard that may or may not have a bunch of creations on it. It depends on if you have done any of these creations. You're going to click Learn. Make sure it's on 3D. If you haven't done the starter lessons, please do those first. I do have a video to those in my playlist. Click on Lessons. I have videos on all of these. Click See All Lessons. Then choose Saw-Shaped Wrench. Now, if you've started this already, please restart the project. The reason why is let's all start on the same page because maybe there are some mistakes and it would be nice to address them as we go and not try to fix things afterwards. So click on Start or just click anywhere on this bar. You should have a mouse today, okay? Without a mouse, Tinkercad is pretty hard to use. It says in this lesson, you'll learn how to create a cool saw-shaped wrench. A saw-shaped wrench. So it looks like maybe you could put, if you 3D printed this, you could put a nut in here and tighten it. I'm not sure how well that would work, but sounds good. We'll gain some skills. So continue to the next step. I can do that. Start the lesson by dragging a polygon to the workplace. So if we just go over here, we see the shape, obviously. Make sure you're on basic shapes and you can scroll down and here's a polygon. I'm going to drag it so it's in the perfect spot. Now, if you've done some of these lessons with me, you will see that sometimes they do make mistakes and things won't match 100%, like the dimension is a tiny bit off on this one. I'm not going to worry about this. Now, if I was making this for a wrench that I actually wanted to use, I would measure and make sure it was exactly what I wanted. In this case, we can talk about that as we go. Now rotate it 30 degrees. So the way we rotate it is highlight, okay? And then look for this the arrows on the two ends of the semicircle. You click it and then rotate it. The further away you get, the more accurate you'll be. We'll rotate it 30 degrees. And then we'll just let go. Perfect. Hold the Shift button and scale it smaller to a width of 14 millimeters. So they want, I believe, this to be 14 millimeters. So the reason why we hold Shift is because if we don't, when we change this to 13, you'll notice it doesn't stay, the proportions are wrong. So I'm going to undo that. We hold Shift, and then no matter what we drag it to, it doesn't make a difference, right? It keeps it nice and in line. Now they want it 14 width. That looks correct to me. Let's drag it so it lines up just to double check. That looks like it lines up with what they want. It's not perfect. Like I said, I think how they laid it out isn't perfect. Then to a height of 3 millimeters. So we click this one. If we change our view, it's a little more apparent. And then you can just type 3. You could drag it down if you want, but I like to be more exact in it and just type. Now I want to see if I can get this to line up. So I'm going to change my snap grid to something smaller so I have a little bit more control over my movement. And you'll notice because of that, now I'm able to get that perfectly lined up. Perfect. All right. Oh, there we go. So they wanted us to change it to 0.1, so even more control over the movement. All right, let's go to the next page. Move it to the area outlined in the orange. Duplicate the shape in place by pressing Control-D on the keyboard. So we're going to move this into place. And let's make sure this is exact, okay? We want to make it so we're actually looking at the right spot. To move this way, I'm clicking the center scroll wheel, okay? That is pretty good. I could use my arrows if I want, just to see if it needs a little movement. Right there, I'm pretty happy with that. I think that looks great. Then it says to duplicate. Now you could do this. It's the same thing. Press Control-D or this, okay? Now, you'll notice oops, let me undo that. You will notice that we actually just created 2 shapes by doing that duplicate, okay? By pressing the Control-D, we duplicate it in place. Let's go to the next one. Scale it to a bigger size, and we're just going to make it right next to it. So, do they give us the measurement? No, they don't. And if I was making this in real life, I would want the exact measurement. If I was looking for a wrench to carry on my bicycle or something that I needed to be exactly the right size, I would want a little bit more information. I would not be okay with just sort of dragging for the size, but that's what they're doing for us today. So that one's a little bit bigger. Now I'd imagine they want us to continue doing that. So we'll just click on our shape. We want to duplicate or Control D, and then we drag it. Don't drag here because you'll drag the key, the thing that they laid out, right? So we got that. Hold Shift, make it a little bit bigger until it looks about right, and then you can use your keys to line it up. What I'm doing is I'm looking at this side and trying to match the sizes correctly. And when I'm looking, so obviously it needs to go up, right? So I'm going to move it up until it seems to sort of intersect that orange. Now, I don't know if they want everything perfectly in line. I feel like this should all be perfectly in line. I sort of want to do that. So now you'll notice it's all pretty much on one plane. Let me move that just a little bit. Yeah, see, I'm not a big fan of that, but that's okay. I would be doing things a little bit more accurately if I was making this in for a wrench I needed. I'm going to click over. Let's drag it. And you know what? I'll give you the dimensions of these. So you, if you're trying to sort of troubleshoot it, see, I'm having trouble lining it up with what they want. I feel like the dimensions are a little bit off on theirs, and maybe I made a mistake. I'm going to make this a little bit taller, just to fit a little bit better. All right, that makes me a lot happier. Remember, it does not need to be exactly what they want. The reason why is they haven't given us really good dimensions on it. They were telling us the dimensions, awesome, but they haven't. So if you want to make it perfect, obviously you'll have to do a little bit of tweaking. Those look sort of in line for me. I do have a way that I would line it up later, but we'll talk about that in a second. Click next, repeat it. So I'm just basically repeating this until the whole thing is full. Very interesting. All right, so let's do that. So duplicate, click drag, make it bigger. I'm not going to spend as much time making it perfect because I'm really not planning on printing this. If I did, though, I would make sure that I was measuring it perfectly. And like I said, I'm not a big fan of how inaccurate their sizing is on these. Right? That looks close enough. Move on. Like I said, though, I would definitely be much more picky if I was going to print this, and I would measure the sizes and everything. Duplicate, scoot it over, maybe start it up in that corner, right? And then we can click Shift, drag it down to the generally right size, move it back over so it lines up. And one last one. I'm not sure how that one worked, but that almost perfectly did it. Let me drag that out. Perfect. All right. So we got it. Click next. Drag a tube shape to the work plane. So scroll down, grab a tube, put it right there. You'll notice it's not the right size. We'll see if they talk about that on the next slide. Scale the tube to the height of 2.5 millimeters and 10 by 10. So this was in my way, so I clicked the little arrow. They want a height of 2.5 millimeters. Once again, to move over, we click the center mouse wheel. Okay. Now I'm going to click this, change it to a height of 2.5, press enter. And then it needs to be 10 by 10. I'll rotate around it, click my corner, type 10, press tab, 10, press enter. And now I want to align it. It's still not the right size, which is interesting. 10 by 10. Like I said, I think they sort of gave up on some of these. It's a height of 2.5. I'm matching. If we want to actually look that way, I'll give you the correct dimensions. It does look like it's a 10 by 10. We do have to change our width of it. So if I go here, I want to make my sides, oops, we don't need that, More sides you have, the more round it'll be. And then let's change our wall thickness to match. I would definitely make that wall thickness pretty thick because you want it to be strong if you printed it. So the wall thickness I have is 5.43. It's 10 by 10, and it is a height of 2.5. Because it's a tool, let's make it precise by aligning the shapes. Perfect. I'm glad they're talking about that. Select all the objects except the hole shape. So I'm going to drag over, clicking my center mouse button. I'm going to highlight everything. But I don't want this tool shape in there. So if I press Control, I believe, is that correct? Nope. If I press Shift and then click on it, now it's not highlighting this, but it's highlighting everything else. Now they want us to click the Align button, which is up here, Align. Now align the shape in the area outlined in orange. So they want us to align it. Now, I'm not 100% sure what they're going for here. But if I align it right here, see, this would center it all. That would mess it all up, right? This would make it the opposite of what we want. I want to move it all the way to the far left side from my view. And now you'll notice it is a perfect plane. It's one long straight line here, and it seems to be pretty good. Now, I did move that key, the hole, and they didn't want that one. And I apologize for that. I sort of didn't pay attention. Instead of that circle, I align the hole. So we're going to click, hold Shift, deselect the hole. That's what they didn't want me to do. Let's do align it to the top, and now it should be in perfect alignment. Now we click Next. You're almost done. Select all the objects, group them together. Now what I would do right now, I would actually line up. I want this in the center of this shape as well as the rest of those shapes. If I click, number one, I can see that one of my shapes is very strange right now. Maybe I'm missing a shape. It moved over or something. So I definitely fix that shape. I'm not sure when that happened. Okay. Then I would click and I would make sure that this was centered with this. Now it looks like it is, but what you can do is you can click on this, you can lock it. Now, if I click and drag, it's not going to move it. So what I can do is I can click this, hold down Shift, and highlight that. And now I'm going to center those. So I say align, and I want to center it. Now, since I locked this shape, it's not going to move. Only the center thing is going to move. And I want to center it. Now that looks better. So now this is centered in this shape. All of these shapes should be aligned on a plane, which I think they are. So then theoretically, this should be centered within those shapes. Then we highlight all of them. Since this is a hole, it's going to cut a hole. We'll make sure the height is right. Wonderful. This makes it all the way down to the bottom. I'm not a big fan of this stepping down. I don't think that's correct. I think everything should be the same height. So what I'm going to do before I combine that, because if I were to print this in real life, I don't want it looking like that. I would unlock it. I'd look at my height. It's 5.64. Let's just make that 6. Okay, so that's a height of 6. Let's make this one a height of 6. Now they want it stepped down. I don't get it. I would make it all the same height because I don't want it getting weaker. Okay, so if your teacher really wants you to do that, go ahead, do whatever your teacher wants you to do. But I would want to teach my students that we want to create things that are functional. And in this case, the thinner the plastic is, the weaker it is, then the more likely it's going to break. So I would definitely make that the same height throughout to get that strength, especially as you get smaller, you're going to want more force applied. All right, so we highlight it, maybe even make this one 6. Just for a design standpoint, I would actually do this just to have a little more fun with it. I would take this shape, I'm going to hold Shift, highlight it, I will align it. I'd actually center this for fun because I think that looks nice. I think that looks nicer. And I'd maybe make it a little thicker, but we can highlight them all now. If we group them together, now we'll see there is a hole in there. All these little shapes should disappear once it is, once we've gone through it. And there we go. All right, now we have, this is a little bit stronger. It's a stronger one. And I would be happier with that if I was going to spend my time actually 3D printing something. I would want it a little smaller. Now, what I would actually do if I were making this in real life, I would measure. Now, I don't like that they didn't show us how to make the hole, but obviously the hole is the same as this. So, guys, you're done. But let me take it a step further, okay? I'm going to delete their hole. I don't like that. Okay, now we have our shape. Now what I would say is this. If I actually I'm going to ungroup it. This is how I would do it, okay? This is how I would do it in real life. I would say, okay, this is a certain height, and remember it is in millimeters. This is 14 by 12 or whatever, okay? I would measure the nut that I want this to work on. So maybe I want this one to fit a 10 millimeter. So what I would do is I would measure the 10 millimeter. I would get a ruler or a caliper out, and I would measure the 10 millimeters. Then I would go over here and I would take a polygon out, and I would say I want to be able to, and maybe, I mean, I'd imagine a 10 millimeter nut is going to be 10 millimeters by 10 millimeters, right? All right, and then the height doesn't matter because this is going to be a hole, okay? And then I would take this and I would move it. Let me show you. Now they rotated it, so we will have to rotate it. I believe it was by 30 degrees because we want it to align correctly, right? I would lock my shape. I would highlight both of these, and then I would say align, and I want to center them. Now you'll notice, that's silly, you'll notice this one's not moving. So it's not necessarily working. Let's try that again. There we go. All right. So now, do you see how, and the rotation's a little bit off, so you'd have to play with that. But I won't spend too much time on that. Is it off? Yeah, it's off. I must not have rotated that correctly. I apologize for that. Okay, so now when we combine them, I would have an actual hole. Oops. The reason why that happened was because it was still locked. If I combined them now, I would have an actual hole the size of the nut that I actually want to use. Now, obviously, I didn't align that correctly. I won't spend too much time on getting that aligned perfectly. But now I would have a 10 by 10 hole. And I don't think that stayed. Yeah. Okay. And that way we could actually use this to be a wrench. Now, what's going on exactly? You'd have to measure the size and make sure it's perfect. And this doesn't actually look like it's exactly what we want. The reason why is the 10 by 10 is not the correct measurement. The reason why is, let me talk about that. A 10 millimeter nut is probably, I don't know if it's 10 millimeters from here to here. Is it from the flat side to the flat side? I'm not sure, but it can't be 10 by 10 because if we're saying it's 10 by 10 here, we're saying the distance from here to here is 10 millimeters. But then we're saying also the distance from here to here is 10 millimeters. So it's not going to be the perfect size. The way to remedy that would be is to, when we grab our polygon, let me rotate it to match. Zoom out. So this was the correct spot. The only reason why is if I measure from here to here and it's 10 millimeters, that's perfect then. So what we can do is hold down Shift, click and drag, and make it so this number on the right-hand side is 10. Okay, now it might be hard to get that exact. See, that's a problem I have with this. I could do a little math. Maybe there's a little shortcut to keep those proportional. I don't know about that in here. I feel like I feel like you have to do the math to figure out the other size. Yeah. So I would just drag it so it's really, really close. And now I have a 10 by 10, and we'll notice my 10 millimeter nut is probably not going to line up perfectly. But hopefully that gives you some insight. Maybe I just confused you more. But either way, you got it done. You did it. I would make a bunch of these, make them all holes. And then when I put them together, then I would finally have my wonderful keychain with actual sizes that could be useful to me. Okay? So hopefully that's helpful. I'm Mr. Duda with STEM with Mr. Duda, and have a wonderful day. Please like this, subscribe, share it with anyone that would benefit. See you later.